All right, Dennis Shanahan will join us as he does every Monday in a moment. But as I mentioned at the top there, no simple story to be told from Saturday's by-election result. So let's get a breakdown as it stands and what it might mean for the federal election from our own election analyst, Tom Connell.
We all know what happened in this Dunkley by-election. Let's delve behind some of these numbers, though. Two-party preferred, we know the overall swing, 3.6%. That could tick up a little bit through the postals that are still coming in, but it's going to be in the order of 3.6, maybe closer to 4. It won't quite get there. Where did it swing is another question that we need to look at as well. Let's have a look at some of the booths. The big one, the early one of the night that got a lot of people excited was Mount Eliza North. As you can see, it's not a particularly large booth. We're seeing a few hundred votes. Huge swing on the primary, but this basically got the Liberal Party back to the primary they had 2 elections ago. In other words, this is their heartland, and it proved to be again. This is one of the wealthier areas, so 10.25% two-party preferred. If that was replicated across the electorate, they would have won it easily. The problem was for them, it was not. So then we look at Langwong and Central. This is more around the blue-collar sort of heartland vote the Liberal Party want to pick up around the country. If they're going to get these outer suburban seats, go straight to the two-party preferred. A smaller swing, but still pretty decent at 4.47%. So some encouragement there. The big area spoken about before the election, though, was Carrum Downs, and this one held up pretty well for Labor. This is where the suburban, outer suburban strategy from the Liberal Party will be a little bit of a concern because as we go to the primary here, you see crucially Labor's primary vote is holding right up. There is a decent swing towards the Liberal Party, but given where the rest of the vote washes out, you come up ultimately with a much smaller swing of 1.71% in quite a big booth. So this will be the concern for the Liberal Party. Some of the more blue-collar working class areas didn't actually swing as hard for them. It was more their traditional wealth areas that helped them out. As for what all this means for the next election, of course, you don't assume what happens in a by-election does at the next one, but if it were to, you can see the sort of seats that are in danger. These are outer suburban or regional seats, all with margins lower than that swing we've seen on the weekend. Remember, that's about 3.6, perhaps a little bit higher. These ones become a bit more of a reach. But if the Liberal Party thinks it can get an outsized swing in the suburbs, in the regions, these are other ones they'll be looking at as well. For now, they didn't get quite the swing they wanted, but something approaching 4% at least gives them some hope. We don't assume the same thing happens in by-elections, but it will mean a few of these seats are in their hunting grounds. And note as well how many of these are from New South Wales. We might see plenty of visits there on the election campaign.
All right, joining me now for more. National Editor of The Australian, Dennis Shanahan. We'll start with Dunkley there. I'm saying it could be close to 4. I spoke to people today about the postals, how they're falling out and other. Issue, of course, there, and you can see with a 78% turnout number, it was always going to be turnout, Dennis, and that's lower than expected. Certainly it is low for a by-election. Harder in a metro market to get the message out, of course. But I've got to say sometimes I'm listening to the analysis yesterday and again today, and I must be, I must be a different sort of political analyst because of course the Liberal Party wanted to win the seat, but a 4% swing, if that's where it lands, a 4% swing against a first-term government where the incumbent died, didn't quit and retire in disgrace, and in Victoria, I would be pleased enough, I'd have to say, because I think that is a good foundation for the Liberal coalition at the next election.
Well, Peter, I think the result, and it'll be 3.5% to 4% in the end, and I think that's actually a reasonable result for both sides. Certainly, Peter Dutton can take comfort from this. The circumstances of the by-election certainly weren't in favour of the coalition, and you really, or despite the swing to the Liberals, there was never a real chance that they would win the seat. It was always the most unlikely result. So to say, oh, well, they didn't win, therefore Peter Dutton's in trouble, is clearly a nonsense. On the other side, the government was very nervous about this seat. We saw the amount of time Anthony Albanese spent in the seat, the amount of money Labor spent on the by-election, because it had become a virtual referendum on the tax cuts and on Anthony Albanese's leadership. Now, I think in the end, and we also have to be careful here not to put too much on what this means for the next election, either generally or within Dunkley, because there were a lot of changes there on voting and there's a redistribution in Victoria. So I think that what we need to do is look at the result and say, OK, this gives grounds for Peter Dutton to work with. As long as he maintains unity and gets some more policy out there, he will continue to get that base back. And for Anthony Albanese, he still hasn't got a bump out of $105 billion in tax cuts, but he has actually maintained the Labor vote. So I think both leaders have actually come away with something that they can say, this is good. What they do in the future is going to be the key. Anthony Albanese has to take the message and change direction, and Peter Dutton has to double down on being unified and producing better policy.